So Janet, what have you been up to lately? Tell me.
Alec, it's not that I'm not very well prepared, but a friend of mine suggested that I just say to you, so Bill O'Reilly was fired today. And then sit back for the rest of the evening.
Next on The Factor. Next on The Factor.
I'm not really saying that. That was a joke.
It's amazing, isn't it, that he, I think I tweeted, I said, O'Reilly is going to swing from the rope that he tried to help
And that
Trump
was before
avoid.
he was fired. You tweeted that early in the day.
Exactly. Well, there you go.
I've been following you very closely.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that's amazing. I can't believe that happened. I mean, Fox is really in that quandary.
You wrote a book. It's your second book.
Uh-huh.
We actually met here at the time you wrote your first book. It was a promise to ourselves, a book about fathers' rights. And when I came here, I was advised not to by, I don't know the why expected trouble, but all of my friends said, don't go, there are going to be pickets, there's going to be trouble, he's very controversial, nobody likes him, it'll be awful. And sure enough, I got here expecting I don't know what, and there were pickets outside. There were about 6 guys picketing for you. And that was when...
Those checks cleared.
That was when you weren't intergalactically popular. That was 2008, I think.
Was it?
Something like that. A lot has changed.
Right.
You now do 6 different things in a day. You're the busiest guy I know. You don't sleep, as far as I can figure out.
I try.
I don't know when. You do the Match Game. You do your podcast. You have a movie that's was the #1 movie at the box office until some other thing came along. Right. It's a very funny movie. I can't even tick off all the things you do. So, when did you write this book, and how did you write this book?
I thought about, obviously, maybe you write this book 10 years from now, you're in your 60s, and you're closer to maybe actually retiring. And I thought...
Wait, 10 years from now, you're in your 60s? You just turned 59.
I'm 59. No, I'm saying for people typically who would write a memoir. Talking to you is like talking to a federal prosecutor sometimes, I have to say. You're right on it. You're right on every word. You're just clamping down on every syllable. But I would assume some people said to me, why write this book now? Because that book this was their opinion, their interpretation, might best be written later on when you're further down and more likely to retire. And I don't mean this to be glib. I thought, I might not be able to remember all of it 10 years from now. So I started to write it down. I made a deal with HarperCollins in the end of 2014. And like most people who are non-writers, I thought about it for 18 months. And then crammed it all together in the last 6 months. I wrote it myself, and it was very painful. I remember when I did the Scottish play, because we're at a theater, so I would do that old showbiz thing. I would do the Scottish play at the Public, and I would go to sleep with the text on my chest, and wake up, and it was the first thing I dealt with in the morning, to cram those, the words into the play. And with this, it was, my wife is here, my poor wife, who, I was just writing and trying to find that flow, and you wind up throwing out half of what you write. It was very difficult. But it took me 6 months.
When did you find the time in the day?
Well, I mean, I would go, it's a business, and the people I was working with had deadlines, and they wanted material submitted to them and certain timelines. And as I joked before, backstage, I would go to the Pan Quotidien on 11th and Broadway near my house. And I love Pan Quotidien because the music is very quiet there. It's very soft. It's not some raucous place. And I'd sit there at the common table there and have all my drinks and my scone and everything. And I'd be writing my book. And the difficulty was that once you got some traction and once you got to get some flow of what you were doing, you wish you could stay and just continue, but I'd have to leave and go do other things in my life with my work or my family. And so it was tough. If I did it again, I would try to make sure it was the only thing I was doing for a period of time. It was tough.
No ghosts, no help, no nothing.
No, when I did the first book, I had a guy who helped me. That was, I think I might have told you this before, the first book I wrote, there was a very funny moment when my accountant called me. And my accountant said to me, they go, do you think the people who work at your home, anybody that helps you take care of your home, is using your phone and making overseas phone calls or making long-distance phone calls? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, your phone bill has leapt from like $100 for that house phone, a hardline phone, a month to like $600 a month. I mean, it's gone through the roof. And I thought, well, I was lying on a couch and talking to my writing partner every day toward the real horse race period where we finished the book for a couple months. And he and I would lay and talk there for like 2 hours during the prime telephone calling time, like noon to 2. So every phone call cost like $50 or something, and I mean, and I didn't even really think about that. But with him, I would talk to him. He would record the conversation. His daughter would transcribe the conversation. She would do a transcription. He was a former evangelical minister who went in to become a ghostwriter for books full time. He dropped out of that game, that other racket he was in, and what I loved was his daughter. Was also raised, and she was a Christian. She was a very devout Christian, very sweet, and college age, doing the transcription. So whenever I said something filthy or ugly, or I said some foul word, I'd say, I'm sorry, Sarah, on the tape. I go, and this guy beep, and I hope he beep, and he's a bleepity bleep, and I would be telling some story, and I go, I'm sorry, Sarah, into the tape. But he helped me a great deal. He was somebody who would say to me, lovely guy, Mark Tabb, and he would say, let's have a paragraph break here. This is a run-on sentence. Let's have a stronger word here. He'd also say to me, I think you're being too easy on this person here. I think you're being too hard on this person here. He really contributed and helped me shape the book, and I learned a lot from him. But this book that I did now, I did it completely on my own.
It sounds like you wrote it without worrying at all about what anybody was going to think about it. For instance,
Here we go.
No. You wrote the sentence, I'm writing it because I was paid to write it. You must have known that that was going to get pounced on and that nobody would read what came right after it, which says, and as we go along, you'll know that the mercenary force is strong in this one. You might want to stop there and put the book down, knowing that its theme is that I did a lot of things for money. Anything truly worthwhile that emerged was just a bit of luck or wonderful alchemy. And then you go on about Richard Burton doing that. And then you go on to say that as you kept doing it, you began to like what you were doing and you began to really warm to the process. And you must have known that nobody was going to mention that part, right?
Well, I mean, I didn't know anything actually in terms of it probably would have been wise for me to assume that. But I did talk to people. I spoke to people, for example, back when I did 30 Rock, people came to me and offered me this ungodly amount of money to do a biography, an autobiography, as my character. I played this character of this NBC executive, Jack Donaghy, and they said, we want to do Donaghy's memoir, and they were going to pay me this ridiculous amount of money. And everybody involved in the show, Tina and NBC and other producers and Lauren, they all said, well, it's not really going to be that great for you because you can't keep all that money. We own part of the show. and we would take a significant cut of that because we own the rights to all this kind of stuff. So they essentially, not deliberately, but just by implication, just killed that whole thing dead. I never did that, and I wish I had actually, but I didn't do that. And then when it came time to do this, I met with my literary agent Karen Gans is here, and we went and met all the people in the business in town, and talked about. And what happened is the crash happened. So the numbers all went down. You're going to get paid this amount of money before 2008. Now you're going to get paid this amount of money after 2008, which was cool. And we went and met many of the people in publishing, and we met people who'd say, in a very kind way, in a very polite way, they'd say, well, your other book was this kind of screed about the family law system and divorce, and this other book is something else entirely, and we were wondering, we're not quite sure what your tone is or what your thing is. So would you mind handing us a writing sample? And I said, great, I have no problem with that. So I write 3,000 words about the day that I overdosed on cocaine back in 1984. And literally they're like, this is great, we love this. Please come in and see us. We're dying to sit down with you and talk to you about more of, this kind of thing of your life. And so I went and did that. All along I'm thinking, maybe I'm exaggerating that I did it for money, but I wasn't doing it because I was in love with the process, because it's not what I do. I've got to steal the time in the seams of other things I'm doing, which is always difficult. But just the same as with acting, because I mentioned this in the book. If you read the book, it's just the same as with acting. Like I feel like I'm some guy that's like signing on to a ship in like a Melville novel, or like like I'm in Moby Dick. I'm just signing on for a ship. I want to work. And I got on the ship, I'm like, what do you guys do on this ship, And I do the soap opera, I get into acting, and I'm like, what do you guys do? This is acting? Great, I'll try that acting thing, and it's not as accidental as that, but kind of. But my love for it and my respect for it deepens as time goes on. And by the time I finished the soap, which was 2 years of doing this pretty frivolous material, my desire to explore that more and get better at that got a hold of me. Just as writing this book made me think, boy, when this is over, I'd like to really have a chance to write a good book,
You
Not just one about my cocaine
First of all, this
addiction.
is a good book.
You're right.
And I've read it now a couple of times, and including you just
Where
saw
did you
backstage.
write what? When you said what, where was that?
Yeah, I showed you the copy with my notes, and the page I happened to open it to says "What?" with a big question mark. So this copy is all marked up, but I've been following, in a way that I'm sure you haven't been following, the Amazon comments on this book, and they're basically either 5 stars or 1. 5 stars are from the people who read it. The 1 stars are all from people who certainly haven't read it.
My brothers.
Don't know what's in it. What?
My brothers, yeah. They all give it 1 star.
Don't even know any of your brothers.
Yeah.
Are that far away removed.
They hate it, yeah.
They hate it, and then but the fun part is looking up their purchase histories, because there was one woman who gave you 1 star, gave 5 stars to Ivanka Trump's perfume, and then gave 1 star to a mug that must have come out during the campaign that had a picture of a pile of excrement with our president's face on it, and the complaint was that it was poorly made and overpriced at $25. So that's
my
the kind
demographic.
of nobody who doesn't like it bothered to buy it, of course. So it's a lot of fun to, if you ever in that.
I'm going to do that tonight. I can't wait to get home.
Really?
And get in bed with my computer and surf the Amazon comments page.
I've actually been in there chasing these people and like commenting on their comments. And all that.
And you have like a nom do comments page?
I certainly
You
do.
ever, that'd be so funny if they knew that it was you.
In fact, if you can find me, you might be able to, because I've been doing it so much. Anyway, you're attracting a lot of. You've got a lunatic fringe that really is kind of hell-bent on.
Yeah, no, I know that. I mean, on
book.
Twitter, people will say, I always do, I'm always taken aback, or I should say, I never tire to be bewildered by people who are like, I hate you, you suck, you're a scumbag, you're a disgrace to this country, I hope you die, I hope you go to hell. But before all that, leave the country, then go die overseas somewhere else. Go die in another country. And then you go to their profile, it's like, Christian, Jesus, and I'm like, family, love.
Yeah, great
MAGA,
America.
You know, and I'm like, MAGA.
Anyway, how do you deal with that stuff? Because you get it from all sides, and
I think I don't really worry about it in terms of, there's no political position I've ever taken, and maybe this sounds like I'm giving myself some kind of medication, but there's no political position I've ever taken that was going to line my own pockets. Yeah, everything I worked on was, and I think that this is a profound in my lifetime, this is a profound thing we see in this country, which is if the head of Exxon gets up before he becomes the Secretary of State, shall we say, and goes off and says, we need to be drilling a pipeline, and we're going to go through this Native American land, anything they want to do that's going to raise their profits, that's going to stimulate their profits, people seem to have no questions about that. They're like, well, that they understand. Making money, they understand. But when I sit there and say, I'd like to have campaign finance reform and public funding of campaigns, I'd like to take the money out of campaigns and address the inequities of Citizens United and so forth, people are like, why don't you shut up? You're an actor, you're here to entertain us. And no, I mean, I get a lot of that thing of like, keep your mouth shut with your public opinions. And I've just had to put up with that for a long, long time.
You talk at the end of the book, I mean, you sort of flirt with the idea of politics throughout, but at the end of the book you say you might write yet another book before 2020 in which you spell out the reasons why why somebody, a better qualified person might make a good candidate for that presidential election. And meanwhile, while you're talking about the book you might write, you give a pretty good set of reasons why you already know the reasons that somebody might be a good candidate. So what are you talking about there?
Well, it's interesting how there was a book I wanted to write. I'm on the board of the Guild Hall in East Hampton, Long Island, where my wife and my family, we live much of the year. And out there, there were some people who had done this kind of glorified ripoff of the Aspen Institute called the Hamptons Institute. And a guy who was a dear friend of mine who I adored, Mickey Strauss, who passed away, he funded it. He would lay out like 25 grand and bring people out to have a couple days of public policy discussion. Then when Mickey died, unfortunately, the whole thing died. And last year we resurrected it, and we had great panels about the court, because Garland was sitting there on the tarmac, if you will, and we got Michael Keegan from People for the American Way, and Michael Waldman from the Brennan Center. We had a great the Supreme Court reporter for the Times.
Linda, it used to be Linda Fair.
Sorry? No, a man. Adam Liptak, thank you. God bless you. Adam Liptak. I blanked. Adam Liptak. No, it was great. 3 great people, some great panels. And this year, this summer, we're doing it again because it was so successful. And I mean it in a really qualitative way. We're going to do one panel at one point called Media Today, Ideology versus Fact. And the book I was going to write next, I was going to write a book called The Haters, about Fox News and about...
Are you going to do that?
I'm thinking about it, but then O'Reilly quit, so I guess what's the point? We've already achieved the desired effect, so is that really... I don't know, he saved me all the trouble. So...
how comfortable were you writing about your acting career?
That was probably the least uncomfortable, yeah. Because political opinions are things that you really believe, and I don't expect anybody to concur, this is America, we all... spend a lot of time talking about what we think the country is and how the country should be. And all my political opinions really come from this really deeply felt, I'm going to get back to your question in a minute, but this deeply felt idea, of how worried I am about the country now that I'm 59 years old. I just turned 59 a couple weeks ago, and I look at the country now and think, I remember when, I'm sorry? I remember when they shot down the plane over Korea when Reagan was in office. That jetliner was shot down. With KAL was the jetliner. Yeah. I'll never forget when that happened. I remember I thought to myself, I really panicked. I had this panic attack. And I thought, oh God, we're going to have World War III. The Russians have shot down this plane, and what were we doing there? I really got very agitated about that whole thing. And I kind of feel a little mild bit of that now that Trump is in office. I'm really very worried about what can happen in terms of foreign policy. And everybody in the world seems a little bit less willing to put up with our crap, the Russians and the Chinese. America has gone around the world and told everybody what to do for a very long time, and we got away with it. And when we were right, when we were on the side of right, we got away with it. But we really are not on the side of right enough of the time now, if you annualize it over the last 100 years maybe. But since the Vietnam War, America's getting it wrong as often as we're getting it right in terms of foreign policy, in my opinion. And so I think that Trump being in office worries me, that the man who was least qualified to be president in our history we basically have a casino operator who's the president of the United States. Think about that in terms of risk aversion.
Have you ever gotten through one of these?
But just no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Have you ever gotten through one of these sessions without being asked about your Trump imitation?
Yes.
Well,
Yes. Today is going to be that day, isn't it?
Today, this is not going to be one of those days. But we're not.
But just to finish this, which is so.
But it's not going to happen now.
No, but Trump is in there, and I think I'm very nervous about that for obvious reasons. I think that the world is there's a lot of more danger out there, and we need to exercise a lot more caution during a period where we have the most incautious man. Setting that aside, the acting thing is tough to talk about because acting is so ephemeral. You know, but who do I love as an actor? I mean, I write a lot about that in the book.
You have a whole list.
I have a whole section. I have an whole index. I have this thing called the Actors Index, in which I took all about the people I love. I must have 150 people names in there of the people I love, going back to the 30s and 40s and so on. And
If you
people
don't
I've
want to
worked
talk
with.
about the acting part, I'll do it.
Go right ahead. Ask a question. I'm sorry. I'm rambling.
No, but you write about it very well, and you happen to have had an extremely unusual career because it shifted gears so much over the course of a long period, and because you have been subjected to what I would have to call looksism. There was a period of time when you were thought of as what you call a young male ingenue, and what other people at the time called a Baldwin as a proper noun.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
That
was a very long time ago.
But there's a movie. It might be
Clueless.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That
People text me that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tweet me that. Yeah.
Right. Well, so.
I had my day in the sun. Yeah. Clueless.
You, your brothers, the whole thing,
Yeah.
and yet there was a skit on Saturday Night Live a couple weeks ago where
I've been soaked in water for the last 20 years.
Right.
He said.
And
How did I feel about that?
For anyone who didn't see it, who was the guy? Younger cast member? Somebody who was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. He was showing clips of you hosting
Pete Davidson.
some of the earlier times you'd hosted, and you look very different. And he kept saying, "Wow, I don't even recognize you." And and this is a picture from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And you do look very different. And this was at the time when you were not thought to be humorous at all. You were thought to be strictly leading man material. And finally, he says...
Show the other picture. I've been soaked in water for 20 years.
Well, I'm going to ask you about this picture.
Yeah. Same photographer. Michael Ty was a photographer. Shot both pictures 30 years apart. One of them in '87 and one of them in 2017.
Anyway, he finally says, "How do you look the way you look now?" And you say, or he says, "What's the line about soaked in water for?"
He said, "Yeah, you look like you've been soaked in water for 20 years."
And you say, in effect, the same thing's going to happen to you, but maybe you'll have a career.
You stick around, you're going to have a career, yeah.
Yeah. Whose idea was that skit?
Them. Yeah, the SNL people are always saying the things to you. You can't believe the things that they say to you when you walk in there. You go to work and they'll go to and they always lay back until it's the last minute. You know what I mean? I'll never forget one time I did I was divorced. I was married before and I was divorced. And it was just the beginning of this period of my life. And I come out there and Darrell Hammond comes out as Clinton. And I'm doing the monologue and Clinton comes out and the audience goes crazy clapping for Darrell. And he's right away, those quick little facial mask things that signal he's coming as Clinton. He's like, biting his upper lip and looking at the crowd like, "Hey, it's me. I'm here, everybody." He's like, "Hey." And he proceeds to sit down with me. Now, they gave me this monologue like the day of the show. And the monologue was like, he said, "Alec, you've got to view this time in your life as an opportunity." It's Clinton, the Rabelaisian man. He says, "You got to view this as an opportunity in your life." He says, "You got to set your oars in the water. You got to put your oars in the water and set sail for the island of Punani, my friend." No, I'm horrified by this. I'm going, I don't want to do this. It's very insensitive. He says, my brother, you can have it running hot and cold on tap. It's going to be incredible for you. And they lay this on you like the day of. Like, what are you going to do? Leave? You're going to walk away and quit, not do the show? So that's SNL is always like, and plus they think that you're somebody who will play along. There are people who come on there who don't have the same kind of sense of humor. I'm not going to say they don't have any sense of humor, but they come on there and they're, I'll never forget one movie star.
You don't have any sense of humor. You say that in the book.
Yeah, well, I don't think I have a certain aptitude for comedy that involves writing, meaning I think that really the funniest people are writers. But my favorite thing was Lauren told me was some famous movie star came in to the show, and he literally just looked at Lauren. They wanted the guy to do a sketch, and he didn't feel comfortable. And this actor, who was this huge movie star, said, Lauren, he said, this is me right here. And he drew a box in the air. He said, this is me right here, Lauren. And everything we do is inside this box. We never go outside the box, Lauren. Okay? And Lauren was just mesmerized by this guy, like laying down that law for him.
What'd they do with him?
They wrote a lot of really tepid and uninteresting sketches, I'm sure. Kind of forgettable episode of the show. But you got to go there and pull your pants down and just make an ass of yourself. There's nothing else you can do.
So did you wind up thinking about that sketch, this is a good thing? I mean, because it was a good thing.
I really don't care. I mean, I'm more interested in, or I'm more concerned when they make fun of other people. Like when we did 30 Rock, we would always have an understanding, and it was very rare, where someone would say something that would kind of spit on someone that we knew or we had some relationship with. My daughter, Ireland, went to school for 10 years with Kendall Jenner and Kylie Jenner in Los Angeles. And Bruce Jenner, when she was Bruce Jenner, would come bounding out of his car and shake my hand, and I had no inkling whatsoever about where this whole thing was heading, this story, and we'd go do that. And at one point, someone in 30 Rock says, in an episode, early on too, by the way, because you could see Bruce was transforming somewhat, and someone said, one character said to the other, oh, I heard so-and-so got a facelift. And the other character said, good facelift or Bruce Jenner tranny facelift? And I remember saying to Tina and the rest, we got to take that out, because I'm going to get out of a car, next week in L.A., and I'm friends with Bruce, and going to school with this kid. So anything that hurt or offended somebody else, I would work very hard to protect them. As far as myself was concerned, they could say whatever they want. I really didn't care.
Let me go back to this.
No,
really.
Shit.
Well, but you talk a lot about how the way you lost the Jack Ryan franchise.
Sure.
That you were going to do A Streetcar Named Desire
Right.
on Broadway, and you were willing to do another Jack Ryan movie.
I was signed to do 3 films. I did the first film, and I was signed by them to do 2 more films.
And Paramount on the sly was negotiating with Harrison.
Paramount had a deal with someone to do a movie, and that movie fell apart, and they owed that actor the money. They were in this business that the biggest stars have pay or play commitments where if the movie falls apart, you still owe me the money. My career and my films I'm making, which take a lot of time, are like reservations on trains that I've booked. And if my train is not going to pull out of the station, there's another train I could have gotten on. You owe me the money that you promised me. They're obligated to pay vast amounts of money if the movie implodes. So where this movie imploded, Paramount went, we got an idea. We're going to put you in another movie. And what that required them to do was sabotage the contract negotiation with the person who was already playing the part. And that was the
They didn't have a deal with you.
No, I had a deal with them, but the contingency was about dates and starting. And I said to them, I want to go do this play on Broadway. I said, what's the stop date? They said, we're not going to give you a stop date. That's when I knew everything was difficult. And I said, okay. I said, when's the start date? We said, and it's weird where it's like, that you can tell something's weird. And I'll go, they'll look in their eye, and I'll say, there's no stop date. And they go, no. There's no stop date. And I go, okay, what about a start date? And I'll arbitrarily just calculate that we're going to go even 5 months. And I'll tell the people, we don't have a start date either. I'm like, you have no start date and no stop date. You're a major movie studio with release schedules, and films are going to be in theaters at certain times, and everybody's waiting for your product to come out of the potato chip factory here and be put in the bag and put on the shelf, and blah, blah, blah. And I go, you don't have a start date or a stop date. They're like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. We never need that. And I go, well, I'm going to go do the play. And they were like, you're going to do the play. You're not going to just give us an open-ended, we can call you any day over the next 5 years and make you come do the movie with us. You're not going to agree to that. I'm like, I don't think so. Great. Okay. Gone. They go make the movie with somebody. They drove me out of the picture, which they've done to other people, by the way.
But so one way or another, though, you were willing to do it, and they were.
I think if I had agreed to what they said, I would have been there. And in the end, I think they would have found another way to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. This is a group of people who, when you make money for them, and we're talking about somebody who they invited into the tent here to do the movies with them, is one of the most successful people that has ever lived in the history of movie making, Ford. And I'm not, I certainly have my disappointments about the way that all went down, and disappointments with him in particular.
I'm trying to get at something good, really.
Oh, go right ahead. Let's go ahead. Take us to somewhere good. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you had gotten that part,
Right.
and you would have had an entirely different career,
Right.
maybe, and a different kind of life. Didn't they do you a favor in a way?
Well, I would like to think that I would be able to make that choice myself, but I wouldn't say they did me any favors, because what they wound up doing was contaminating my feelings for those people. Whenever you make movies with these people, there's just always a lot of suspicion involved. Whatever they say, you're filled with doubt. But more importantly there was an opportunity for me to agree. It wasn't what they did, it was what I did. And that is that when I did Prelude to a Kiss off Broadway and they went to Broadway, I should have gone to Broadway with them. In the book, I say I made a catastrophic mistake early on, which is I chose money over the creative, which I hadn't done for about 7 or 8 years. I went along with certain instincts, and I don't like this word theme, but one of the themes of the book is to encourage young actors and young artists not to chase money and not to become concerned about money, which is very easy to do. And so I said, I did this play. They said, let's go to Broadway. I said, no, because I'm going to go to LA and do a film that's my first $1 million payday in the movie business, which was a huge thing, according to my agents at least. They were like, yeah, let's do that. And when I go to do Streetcar, I'm kind of jerking the car back onto that course, really, to say, this is who I am, this is what I want. And I think it's important to note that in the movie business, people who make movies, you really do have to make movie making the most important thing in your life. I know men and women who are huge movie stars and very talented people, and their families understand. They get it. Daddy's going to get on a plane and fly to Australia for 6 months, and we're all going to go to Australia. And I didn't want that life. So I kind of, and when you don't, I'll finish with this, but when you don't do what they invite you to do, movie people are the most arrogant people that have ever breathed oxygen in human history. There's nothing like movie. They're the most awful in terms of, like, they look at you and they're like, we don't invite very many people to do what we're offering you to do. And when you don't do it, I always said there's an image where, like, there's a button that they want to hit and the floor drops out underneath your chair and you get washed down a drain, like underneath the studio in Burbank, and you get washed out into, like, Barstow in the desert in some farmland, like gurgling water. You come out of a pipe somewhere. They're like, get rid of him. You just go. Because when you don't do what they want you to do, they're just baffled by that.
But you were young, you were pretty, you were malleable. Yes, you wanted to be.
I was a
on
cocaine
Broadway.
addict. Yeah.
You had been a coke. I don't know, but but you. I'm just saying, you didn't wind up being persuaded to give up everything else and become a guy who goes from one $10 million paycheck or $30 million paycheck.
It was a. I'm going to ask you a question next, by the way, so we don't forget my question for you. We're going to switch roles, and maybe much to her dismay.
Okay.
But I mentioned the stuff about addiction. I mentioned the stuff about drugs for a very specific reason. All of it I mentioned for the specific reason of talking about what I learned. what I learned. I mean, I want people to be able to read the book and maybe they can learn something. And I mentioned that, I never talked about being sober. I never talked about 12-step programs and drug addiction and things like that, ever. And then Chris Lawford wrote his book called Moments of Clarity, which he asked, it's a very good book, and he had asked a couple dozen people that he knew to write little essays about their sobriety. And in that book I wrote about and wanted to amplify in this book the idea that movie stardom was another drug to me. I got sober in '85, right before I started to make films in '86. And I've been TV up to then. And I get sober and I go into the movie business and I'm in rooms full of people who, in my mind, they're just handing me another pipe and another lighter and saying, let's go, let's torch this thing up and let's go. Movies are the altar that they pray at. And I have no judgment of them or bitterness toward them that that's what they do, but I was incapable of making that the most important thing in my life. And when you don't do that, you kind of get disinvited to the party.
So I'm just saying, why, if you weren't able to make that decision for yourself, you're kind of lucky it got made for you.
Potentially. I mean, I tell a story that I think is a very funny story because to do Red October was to be around so many things. All of it's a learning experience. And I tell this story because Connery is emblematic of old Hollywood. I mean, Connery was this. You
must be able to do that for you.
Yes. Well, I'll do it for you in a moment. He says Connery is like this. Is like when you're around him. I mean, my mouth was on the ground. He walks in the first day of shooting. His hairpiece. They gave him this kind of steel, crew-cut hairpiece in his uniform. And I thought, oh, God, I'm so fucked right now. I said, no one's going to even see me in this movie now. I'm going to be invisible. They're always going to cut to him. The camera's going to be on him. I go, look at him. Look at him. He's like the best-looking guy I've ever seen in my life. He's like in his late 60s, and he looks like perfect. And he'd walk in, as polite as can be. I'd say to him, I mean, what am I going to say to him? I'm just like, we'll say all this dopey small talk. I'm like, so what are you doing this weekend? What are you doing this weekend, Sean? And he said, I'm going up to Vancouver. I said, you're going up to Vancouver? He goes, yes, I'm going up to Vancouver to resort there to play some golf. I said, why do you go to... And then the following week I said, what are you doing this weekend, Sean? And he was like, I'm going back to Vancouver. And I said, you're going to Vancouver a lot? I said, what that's about? He said, well, I'm a British subject. So I've got to go up to Canada to avoid the taxes. And I go up there and stay at a resort and golf the entire weekend. And then I fly down here on Sunday afternoon. And I said, wow, I mean, I couldn't believe like his life, jetting to Vancouver to golf. But we go to this party. And we're at this party the producer threw. This was like my favorite moment in this business. And Connery's there, and the producer of the film, Mace Neufeld, had a party at his house. And there's waiters and hors d'oeuvres and champagne and all these people at his house. And Connery sees a tray go by with champagne. And he reaches over to take a glass. And his wife, who's this little spark plug of a woman, slaps his hand. She goes, no, Sean. Do not drink the champagne. No. Sean's like a little boy. He's like, oh. And he's like really miffed, And she's like a lion tamer, She's like got a chair in one hand and a whip in the other. No, Sean. No. She like hits him. And the guy comes back with the hors d'oeuvres, the guy with and Sean sees her, he goes to reach for an hors d'oeuvre. She says, no, Sean. Not to eat the pestois. No. And he turns to me and he goes, it's not going to be very much of a party. I thought, even James Bond, his wife's telling him what to do all the time. Sean. I love you, Sean. It was a big lesson. The biggest movie star in the world. And his wife would be like, no. And he was like a little boy. He was like...
I know her. You got her perfectly.
I know how he feels.
All right. You've got to stay.
Your question.
Oh.
My question for you, which what I'm fascinated to know from your life, I've known you for a while now. We did this program once before, and I came up to Jacob Burns up in Pleasantville, which you're very deeply involved with your family. to do a program there. Explain to me how you went from reviewing films and critiquing films for the Times to critiquing books for the Times. Was there some overlap between the two? What was the scene between the two? I find that very fascinating.
Well, it's funny you ask that, because somebody did me a favor of the kind that I just asked you about. I had gotten really, when I started reviewing films, it was 1977. Vincent Canby and I had maybe 3 a week, 5 a week, something like that. There weren't that many. By the time I became chief critic in 1993, there were maybe 13, 15 a week. And by the time it got to be 1999, 17, sometimes more. And I had trouble delegating. I was really burning out. I was exhausted. And I just wasn't doing a very good job. And there was some feeling that the department needed to be reorganized. And when they came to discuss it with me, I just said, okay, I quit. And they said, oh, no, don't do that. How would you like to be a book critic? And I said, are you serious? Absolutely not. I wouldn't ever see anybody. I'd just stay home and read. That's an awful idea. I quit. And they said, and it was a bad week or two went by when I just walked out. And they called and said, look, you have months and months of overtime. Why don't you, from working so hard, why don't you just cool off and we'll talk again, but calm down. So 3 or 4 months went by, and all I did was read and stay home, and that's all I wanted to do, and I really enjoyed it, and then got to be. I remained the critic until the last day of the last century, and I did Roger Ebert's New Year's Eve Millennium New Year's Eve show with him, and got to be March or so, and I agreed to have lunch with one of them. I was really furious and decided I would never set foot in the Times building again. And anyway, they were moving to the new building, but I just severed all contact with them. But they continued to pay me, and I agreed to meet one of them in a restaurant, pretty far enough from the Times building that it was safe, like up on Lexington Avenue. And he told me that one of the 3 regular Times critics was leaving. Not voluntarily, and that these jobs didn't come up very often, and that if I wanted to do anything else there, he asked me if there was anything else I did want to do there, and I said that was the only thing I was really capable of. And he said, well, here's your chance. So by then, I thought, well, I'm going to be very bored if I don't do anything. I might as well try this. And it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. I never would have quit movies on my own steam. I really needed a nudge. I love doing books. I was much better. I would have had to do all those cartoon movies that you wouldn't sit through with a gun to your head. I would have had to review that stuff.
But teach people that. Do you have to? Like when you say
yes.
from 6 to 8 or whatever to 13, does that mean reviews or screenings you go to? Do you walk out of there and say to them, I'm not writing about this.
No.
This is a piece of crap. They assign
you're
it.
the chief critic. No, they don't assign it, but now they have 2 chief critics because it's too much of a job for one person to handle. But they have to do whatever is the big movie coming in. And my son is here, sweetheart. I'm sorry, Batman versus Superman. I know you loved it, but I didn't want to be doing that, And,
You're
and,
entitled.
And you know, it's gotten better now, but throughout the 2000s, the aughts, they were showing movies that I didn't want to go to. And a friend of mine, a guy I didn't know, just cold called me and said, this is right in that period between when I wasn't working for them, but they were still paying me. A guy I didn't know called and said, we'd like to start a not-for-profit theater right here in the town where you live, and we have a building to do it in, and we're just looking for like a core group of people who want to get involved in it. Would you do that? Would you help us with it? And that was the Jacob Burns Film Center. And I could never have done it had I still been the Times film critic. But since I was at Liberty, I said sure, and that's turned into one of the best things in my life, and I've made fantastic friends doing that, and I am infinitely happier, and I never would have gotten out of the trap I was in.
Now, one of your colleagues from the Times this year, the other writer is...
Yes, Jennifer Senior.
Jennifer Senior was here.
Who replaced me and has the... No, she replaced me as a book critic.
That's what I mean,
I retired as a book critic.
Right, no, I mean as a book critic, but my point is that do you find that in terms of the Times and in
Hi,
terms
Jen.
of... Right. Where are you? Wave.
Where are you?
Where are you? Fantastic. Or don't wave if you don't want to. but for both of you, I guess, and I'll ask you, because she's sitting down there, obviously, is about
We're
the
kind
relevance
of twins.
of the relevance of book criticism versus movie criticism. Do you find that readers of the Times, of which I'm a daily reader of the Times, you know, online or in print, they're more disposed toward reading and absorbing and cultivating book criticism than they are film criticism? Is book criticism still, is it more relevant now than film criticism? Because many people don't care about film criticism anymore, or they ignore it.
The thing is, I think it is, but book critics get to choose what they want to do, and they'll generally choose books that they think are interesting. People like to read pans. And they think, you know, if you stick a hammer in something, they just couldn't be more delighted. And if you're an interested critic and you want to call people's attention to something good, you're not being hilarious enough. So I don't know where a reader's attention is, and frankly, I don't usually care. I just figure if I'm interested in something, my job or my ex-job was to make people interested in it too. So.
But do you think film criticism is less relevant than it was 10 years ago?
There's Rotten Tomatoes.
There's Rotten Tomatoes.
I rest my case. Now listen, we're in the lightning round. We have to go very fast, but you do not get out of here without you. A little kid in the airport asked you how you do the Trump imitation. I'll be damned if I'm not going to ask you that.
What's your question?
It's a double question. First, just a little bit in brief. How do you do it?
About Trump?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I've said this countless times. I mean, I was going to do a
know.
film last summer, and the film was, you know, when I said to everybody, when you do a film for the movie studios, you do a TV show for the network, these people may crucify you and torture you over what the number is going to be on your paycheck. But once you resolve what that number is, the check never bounces. The studios and the networks have billions of dollars in lines of credit and blah, blah, blah. But when you do an independent film, you have to set up a payment structure with them that involves an escrow account. They put the money in escrow, or you don't show up for work. You're not going to take their word for it that they have the money, because I've had difficulty with that in the past, as many other people have. So I'm waiting for the escrow account, for the smoke to come out of the chimney there with my agents, that everything is legit. And the day comes, that's the due date for them to escrow the money, and the money doesn't go in the account. And Lorne Michaels calls me and says, I think you should play Trump on the show. I think it'd be great for you to play Trump. And you know, Lorne, of course, is this legendary guy, Svengali, Dracula, you know, hypnotic, powerful force in the business, and always right. I mean, he's nearly always right. And I said, I can't. I'm doing the movie, and we give them an extension of like a week of grace to put up the money, because some of the people involved were friends of mine, and the money doesn't show up. And these guys, I called them up. I said, fellas, I'm not coming. I mean, I'm not going to take your word for it. That's how this works. And I call up Lauren. I go, I'm Trump. I'm ready. Let's go. And I had no idea what I was doing. I go into a room with them. They have you watch a lot of tape. The people there are very research-centric. So I always tell this story, but I went to go talk to some writers about one episode. Maybe it was like my 4th or 5th time doing the show. And the young woman who was the page said, they're taking you on a lap around the writers' rooms. And we knock on the door, and the young woman says, we're going to go see Steve and Wendy. We're going to go see Steve and Wendy. And she knocks on the door, very cheery, and nobody answers. And she knocks on the door again, and nobody answers. And she knocks again, maybe a little louder, and the door opens, and the guy's sitting against the door to prevent us from coming in. And he kind of moves out of the way of the door and looks up and sees me and goes, oh, come in, come in, come in. Sorry. He says, sorry. And I come in the room, and there's like 5 adults in this room, men and women in their late 20s or 30, very young staff, and they're watching the Paris Hilton porno tape. But in true comedy fashion, they're not watching it, they're listening to the Paris Hilton. They're all staring at the floor, and the one guy's going, wait, stop. He goes, play that back. What did she say? Play that back. What did she say? Play it back again. And they're trying to mine what she's saying for some kind of comedy content. They don't give a damn about the porno tape. So everything you do with them, you're like, it's research. We're watching Paris Hilton porno tapes for research. We're watching Tony Bennett shows, Christmas specials for research. And we do the Trump thing, and I watch Trump, and I think, most of the things you do that have any impressionistic quality to them, you have some degree of admiration for them, My wife and I go to the Tonys, and Pacino was there. And I know Al, I love Al. Al is I'm in the book, I just lick Al from head to toe. I love Al. And Al is there, and what's his name, who won the Tony? Mark Rylance wins the Tony. And Pacino's there, and his girlfriend, and me, and my wife. And Mark Rylance gets up and gives his acceptance speech, in which he quotes from some play, when the actor walks through the wall, or whatever the monologue is, this complete non sequitur madness that he utters as his acceptance speech for the Tony. And when he's done, Pacino and I are in the front row, we're watching, and he leaves, and the music strikes up, and they go, we'll be back in a moment with the Tony Awards after this word from our sponsor. And everybody gets up to go to the bathroom and go get a drink, and Pacino turns to me and goes, what was that about, Alec? What was he saying there? He's going to walk through a wall. I don't get it. What was he saying there? About walking through a wall. I don't get it at all. And like you're there with somebody like him, who I've studied him and worship him. I do De Niro's movie, The Depart. I did
Trump.
No. De Niro's movie with Matt Damon. No, not Departed. The one that De Niro directed about the CIA. Good Shepherd. I was in that movie. I can't remember the fucking title. But I'm in that movie, and you do the movie, and they say cut, and the director comes up to you, and it's the director. It's like it's going to be some guy, or we've seen rare occasions a woman, who you don't have that kind of relationship with, and the director is going to come up to you and give you your notes, and it's Robert De Niro. And it takes a lot of getting used to. Like you're standing there, and he talks to the cameraman first, and he's very technical and very much of a craftsman, and then he walks up to me and go, and he stare at you for 30 seconds. You go, and you go, you're very good, Alec, you're very good. Very good. Very good. And you're just standing there staring at him going, you don't ever forget who they are to you, never. You try to act like you're cool. You're like, oh, thank you, Bob. And but you're sitting there going, oh my, what you see is him. In the opening of the film. But then Trump comes along. You don't feel that way about Trump. You're not sitting there going, oh, let's talk about all those things we love about Trump. Well, let's go over those Trumpisms. I watch him, and I go, this guy's unhappy. He's cranky. When he wins, when he loses, he's the same.
Have you ever seen him laugh?
I've seen him laugh, and you see him smile, but it's like a holiday. It's almost never. You know what I mean? And so I'm watching the tapes. Now, of course, we're not doing Trump as a movie. on a set with a camera where Steven Soderbergh is directing, and we're giving them like the most finely etched Trump, reality we can. This is SNL, and it's a caricature. So the goal is to just nail a couple things. So I'm there, and we're about to go out and do it for the first time at the dress rehearsal of the very first show, and I have no fucking idea what I'm going to do. And I remember looking at the tapes. I remember literally this guy Chris Kelly takes you by the hand. He's the stage manager. You go all the way around to the stage so the audience doesn't see you, and they put you behind a curtain, behind a scrim, so you're going to make an entrance for one of these goofy debates with Hillary Clinton. And I'm just sitting there going, left eyebrow up, right eyebrow down. I said, stick your mouth out as far as you can, like you're going to try to suck the face off the other person in front of you, like. And I go, just those three things. And then the last thing was, you want to try to get into some kind of a mental key that they play. And I'm going, Trump to me is a guy who, I've said this countless times, but Trump to me is a guy who he's constantly in his rhetoric seeking a stronger, better word and never finding it. So when Trump is talking to you, he's like, Mike Pence came to my office today, and we had a fantastic session. And Mike is really just the most fantastic person. He's fantastic. And he's got like a glossary of like 100 words, And I said to people the other day, we were talking about the same thing. I said, to me, Trump's mind is it's like a warehouse in like a Coen Brothers movie. You know what I mean? There's like a lot of guys running around, big fat guys in overalls, and there's like these boxes and these bins with these cards in them. And Trump's going, my nephew, my son-in-law Jared is really just, and guys are running down these hallways going. Amazing person. That's all I got. That's all I got. Amazing. We got a whole pile of fantastic over here, and that side of the warehouse is all amazing. Trump was like killing himself. My daughter is just a fantastic person, and that's all he's got. That's it.
You're not really going to stop doing this, are you?
But let's admit, whoever does this stuff about him and whatever the humor comes from SNL or wherever, we use this to deal with the fact that we're all still in shock that he's the president. I know I am, but shocked.
All right.
Do your Trump for us. Come on, go ahead, do it. I bet you got one out there in Pleasant.
So Bill O'Reilly was fired today. All right, lightning round. This clock says we're supposed to be out on the sidewalk. If you weren't an actor, what would you be?
I said that in the book I wanted to be a conductor in the symphony.
No, you said every day you'd like to be a different thing.
Well, that was in the beginning, and I didn't really mean anything I meant in the beginning of the book. I was getting people to keep reading the book. No, I would like to be. I got hooked on classical music, and I'm the announcer for the New York Philharmonic on the radio, and I love that job. And thank you. No, I love that job more than anything. That was my favorite job. And that and TCM, I love doing those two things a lot. And I would see these guys conduct. I think, oh God, what I wouldn't give to be them for like a couple of months.
Is there a role you still long to play on stage or screen, and why? P.S. You've done so many greats from great writers.
Well, I think that I think for many people who like to work in the theater, one of the dreams is to originate a role in a new play. If you can originate a role in a play that has some traction, that is very successful, that's great, because otherwise it's a pretty steady diet of revivals. And so finding plays you think people are ready for. Every actor who turns 50, you go, oh, you call up your theatrical agent, and you're like, I'm ready to play Shannon now. I'm ready to do Iguana, and because that's the Williams piece. With Williams, it's Stanley and Brick and Chance and Val. Then you'll hop up to Shannon in your 50s, and then after that, it's Big Daddy, and then that's over. But an original role would be fun.
What's your favorite memory of your time on 30 Rock?
My favorite memory of my time on 30 Rock? I have many. That was a really fun show. I guess the end, when we said goodbye, that was painful. I have this long monologue in which I'm going in this incredibly brilliantly written by them circuitous way of telling Lemon that I love her. I'm on this boat. It was really incredibly well written. But I guess my favorite was they would come to you on a Wednesday, and Wednesday was the read-through for the following week's episode. And we'd go into a room, and it was all the crafts people from all the crafts that create the show, and us on a kind of a dais, the cast, to read. And there was a camera down the middle to beam us out to LA so the executive there could watch the read-through. And we'd have a formal read-through of the show. And they'd come to us beforehand. And Robert Carlock, who was the co-head writer with Tina, would come to me with whatever the latest, completely insane idea was that they had for me. And Carlock said to me, okay, and his phrase was big swing. He'd say, it's a big swing, it's a big swing, he'd say. But we want you to do the Patty Duke thing, split screen, where you're going to act against yourself. So you're you as Donaghy, and on the other side of the camera, you are a gay Mexican soap opera star. And I was like, what is wrong with you people? You people are so fucked up.
By the way, you've said that you're gonna keep changing your book on Facebook because you didn't like some of the things, typos and things that got.
I'm going to correct those. We're going to have like the corrections that go in there.
But have you been doing it yet?
Then we're going to do it. We're going to post that soon.
Oh, because
Yeah. And then we're going to do add like different essays and stories. I have so many stories I didn't put in because I put in what I thought was. We agreed the book should be around 300 pages. How many pages is it? Like 290?
275.
Is it 275? I can't believe you remember that. You're like weird. You're a literary witch.
No, I always think like, how far do I have to go?
How far I have to go. But they said to me, keep it under 300 or around 300. So I had all these other stories of like things and movies I did that were really just crazy and really funny. We're going to put
But
some
what
more stories
about
in there.
those of us who bought it as a book and aren't on Facebook? That seems very unfair.
Yeah. I really can't be bothered with that, Jen. But we're going to offer on Facebook. And you're not on Facebook? I'm not on Facebook either, so I sympathize
Can't you
with
just
but
do
I'm
it on
creating
the
a page.
internet, on your website? Why
Yeah,
do
we'll
you-
do that. We'll figure out
Don't
something.
do it on
Yeah.
Facebook.
You've shamed us into doing
That's
it in some alternate.
exclusionary.
Yeah.
All right.
Facebook is exclusionary, did you say?
No, Facebook is.
Yeah, Facebook is exclusionary.
Well, I don't want to have.
You
to
might be the
join.
first person that's ever uttered that phrase. Facebook is exclusionary.
I don't know.
It's so exclusionary.
You'd be the only reason I'd have for joining it.
But I have a page on Facebook just to protect my name and my page.
You
on
ever
Facebook.
look at it?
But people will send me messages and it's like, hey, we went to high school together
So
and
no.
now I'm in prison. And I go, oh, what happened? What happened, Ralph?
So you don't look at it either.
I rarely look at it. Yeah.
So don't do that.
I rarely look. Yeah, my wife said to me too, but we're not big Facebook people.
So please don't do that.
Okay, I won't do it.
Okay.
It was like a big project. I love how I meet you. I see you like once a year, and you're like, "Don't do that." I'm like, "Okay, let's delete." Delete. Janet said, "Delete."
What keeps you up at night?
My wife and I had 3 children in 3 years, and our youngest son. I mean, my wife is the greatest. How many people applaud if you have children? You have children. Okay. So my wife is the greatest mother in the world. She's out here somewhere, and my wife's the greatest mommy in the world.
You have
and
3 genetically blessed children.
Yeah, the kids are incredible. But our youngest son now, Leo, is the most clingy of the children we have. And this kid, he just won't get off. He's like, this is like Keystone Pipeline to him. He's not standing down. He's like, and it's incredible. So we usually go to sleep. We probably fall asleep at a certain time. My wife a little earlier than me, and I read a bit. And then, like around between 1 and 2, the baby comes in with us to sleep with us because he's been sleeping, and then he comes in to breastfeed. And then he's up and down for a while. And right as we're about to go to sleep, it is uncanny. Right as we're about to just have like that little sweet moment, maybe an hour, 45 minutes of real sleep, we're about to fall asleep. Our other daughter wakes up and just screams like Jamie Lee Curtis in the other room in a horror movie. She's like, come in here now. And my wife runs down and gets her and brings her into bed. And she's very talky. My daughter, I joke and say that my daughter Carmen is the reincarnation of Elaine Stritch. She's just very... We walk down the street, and everywhere I go, people thank me for the Trump thing. I mean, and it's all day long. They're like, I'm walking down the street with my family in kind of a normal way, and people are like, and I wave, I'm like, thank you. And one time I'm like getting Carmen in the stroller, my wife is, and we're bent down, and this woman's head comes like down into our little family bubble here. And the woman looks at me, she goes, thank you so much for this thing you're doing. You're helping us get through this whole thing. I'm like, thank you. And my daughter Carmen looks up and goes, I don't like you. Anybody that fractures our family bubble, Carmen's like,
All right, last thing, and you're just going to love this. All right. I enjoy listening to your podcasts. It's very clear that you are a talented interviewer and are truly interested in your guests. Have you thought of moving toward a career in journalism, Dick Cavett style?
Dick Cavett, I wish I brought my phone with me because I was going to read you the email Cavett sent me about my book. He got my book and he wrote me an email where Cavett is just, he's so funny and so witty and so concise. And he wrote me some email that literally said something like, I'll never read another memoir now that I've read yours. I could just stop now. I'll never read another one again. And I have found that I wanted to do the talk show thing on TV and have more of a Charlie Rose, Tom Snyder, not the loud kind of stadiums type of crowd like Fallon and so forth, because there's plenty of that on TV, and those guys do it very well. I wanted to do that on TV, and but two things. One is that the camera changes people indelibly when you interview them. When we're in the bubble of the radio show, the women would call up, but I'm not saying this to be gender specific, but all the women would call up and say, there's no streaming camera, because a lot of radio shows simultaneously want to stream on video. And we'll say to them, no streaming video. They'll say, great. I don't have to do my hair and my makeup and put on a dress or some outfit I really like. I can just come in my gym clothes. And they're totally cool with that. And everybody comes into this room, wherever we're recording, and we have a really, Letterman is one of the best examples where Letterman comes, and without asking, without trying to snatch it from them or take it from them, 20 minutes goes by, and Letterman starts to tell you things he wants you to know that he's been going through about how he worked all those years so hard to be successful and never had kids and never got married, how lonely he was, how miserable he was, how depressed he was. And even his staff, the people who work with me were telling me even his staff were in a room with like their hands over their mouth going, oh my God, like they had never heard him talk that way. So the formula for the podcast is we record for an hour, and without having to try to take it from people, like after about 20 minutes, they'll give it to you. They'll tell you who they are and what's going on with them. I love that. But the minute you put a camera on people, that changes. So we wind up having a different kind of guest. I may do the TV show. I'm actually in the middle of negotiating with a company right now to do it for TV. But my version is like I said, I want to have the camera on me, tight, and this is the opening of the show. It's on like at 1 o'clock in the morning or like 2 o'clock in the morning. Who the fuck cares? You know what I mean? Because you can stream it later on. And the camera's on me, and the camera pulls back, and I say, hi, I'm Alec Baldwin. Welcome to the Alec Baldwin Show. And behind me, you see like a jazz quartet. Doon, 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 doon. And the camera keeps by. My guest tonight is Crispin Glover. We haven't heard from him in quite a while, have we? Crispin Glover, some freaky guests. And as the camera pulls back, there's like 12 tables around us, like cafe style. People are like smoking pot. They're drinking wine. We want everything to be really loose and kind of funky. And I pitched that to this company, and they were like, we're never going to do that. So I'm struggling to find out. But in the meantime, I still enjoy doing the podcast. Well, we have one coming, by the way. I've got Tony Hendra on now, the great writer Tony Hendra. But I will tell you that when you bring in people who you know them and you've read about them, and they talk about your work, and I had tears rolling down my face when I listened to the cut of the show the other day. We had Carly Simon come in and talk about her career in music, and it made you cry. She was great, fantastic. Do your Trump for us, come on. Left eyebrow up, right eyebrow down. Suck the face off the person in front of you. Go.
Next time. Thank you.